In Willow Haven, faith wasn't just about Sunday sermons, it was the rhythm of the town. Neighbors waved on porches, children played under the bell tower, and families gathered around the same pews their parents and grandparents had once filled. At the center of it all was Pastor Daniel Whitmore. His voice carried through the church like thunder, commanding, certain. But if you asked the people of Willow Haven who really kept the church alive, they would all say the same name. Grace Whitmore was the kind of woman everyone trusted. She had a smile that calmed arguments, hands that baked pies for funerals, and eyes that remembered details. Most would forget the name of a child's pet, the anniversary of a couple's first date, the way a neighbor took their tea. She was, in many ways, the heart of Willow Haven. That's why when she vanished in May 2001, the town didn't just lose a woman. They lost their compass. On the morning of May 14th, Pastor Daniel called the police. His wife, he said, was missing. He had woken early to prepare for a meeting and found her side of the bed empty. At first, he thought she'd gone for a walk. But her shoes were still in the closet, her purse still in the hole, the car still in the driveway. In the kitchen, officers found a half-drunk mug of tea, and next to it a piece of paper folded neatly, the words on it, written in sharp block letters. She was never yours to keep. The note raised more questions than it answered. Whose handwriting was it? What did it mean? And why leave it behind in plain sight? Detectives started, as they always do, with the husband. They questioned Daniel for hours. He handed over bank records, phone logs, even personal journals. He sat for a polygraph and passed. Still, some in town whispered. He was calm, they said. To calm, his grief seemed measured, rehearsed as though he were delivering a sermon instead of mourning his wife. Then came the first break in the case. Behind the church, in a shed used to store Sunday school costumes and props, investigators found Grace's scarf, buried under boxers of robes and tinsel. The scarf was singed at the edges, faintly smelling of smoke. Forensics confirmed it was hers. The congregation split in two. Some believed the scarf was planted to frame Daniel. Others wondered how his wife's belongings kept appearing on church grounds. Detectives kept digging, and that's when they found Grace's journal. Inside were no confessions, but there were questions. She wrote about Daniel's unexplained late-night meetings, about strangers who came by the church but never entered service, about conversations that stopped when she walked into the room. Grace wondered if her husband was hiding something. The discovery rattled the town. Was Grace caught in something bigger than anyone realized, or was she simply a wife troubled by shadows? 3 years later, in 2004, demolition crews at an old farmhouse outside Willow Haven unearthed something chilling. Behind a crawl-space wall, they found a locked wooden chest. Inside, Grace's wedding ring, the one Daniel swore she never took off. Alongside it were photographs, blurry, off-center shots of Grace, grocery shopping, walking, even standing at the church doors. Someone had been watching her. The farmhouse had belonged to Thomas Greer, a former church member who had left bitterly after a dispute with Daniel. Greer had died in 2002, a year after Grace vanished. Among his belongings, investigators found a notebook filled with the same phrase scrawled over and over. She was never yours to keep. The case should have ended there, but it didn't. If Greer was responsible, where was Grace's body? Why was her scarf found on church grounds, not in his home? And what about the doubts in her own journal? Doubts that pointed not to Greer, but to her husband. The case remains open. For years, the pew where Grace once sat has stayed empty, like a wound that refuses to heal. People whisper when they pass it. Some light candles. Others avert their eyes. A mug of tea cooling on a kitchen table. A singed scarf buried in a shed. A wedding ring locked in a chest. And a note that sounded like scripture twisted into a threat. Was Grace Whitmore taken by a bitter man haunted by obsession? Or was the truth hidden in the very church she built her life around?